Queen Nala stood at the massive window of her warship, looking down at the small blue planet below. Earth hung in the darkness of space like a jewel, beautiful and defenseless. For 2 long years the humans had fought against her empire, but now their end was near. The Queen's ship, called the Void Sovereign, was the largest vessel in the Vorthak fleet. It stretched for miles, dark metal gleaming under the distant stars. Around it floated hundreds of smaller ships, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a city. The sight should have filled any enemy with terror, but the humans kept fighting. Queen Nala's long fingers tapped against the cold metal of the window frame. Her skin was pale gray, almost silver, and her eyes glowed with a soft purple light. She was tall, even for her people, standing nearly 8 feet high. The crown on her head was made of black crystal, sharp edges catching the light from the control panels around her. Behind her, Commander Thek approached with heavy footsteps. He was shorter than the Queen, but twice as wide, his thick arms covered in scars from 100 battles. His voice was rough when he spoke. "My Queen, the human ships are moving toward us. They seem to be planning one final attack." Nala turned away from the window. "How many ships do they have left?" "Only 12, Your Majesty. Their largest vessel is leading them. We have identified their commander as Captain June of the Earth Defense Force." The Queen nodded slowly. "Just 12 ships against our 500. Either they are very brave or very foolish." "The humans have always been both," Thek replied with a harsh laugh. "But bravery means nothing against our mind touch. Shall I give the order to destroy them?" Nala raised her hand. "No. Let them come. Close. I want to speak with their leader before we end this war." For 300 years, the Vorthak Empire had conquered world after world using their greatest weapon. The mind touch was not a blade or a gun, but something far more terrible. When a Vorthak placed their hand on another being's head, they could reach into their thoughts, their memories, their very soul. Most creatures broke immediately, their minds shattered by the invasion. Those who survived became slaves, their will destroyed, their spirit crushed. Queen Nala had used the mind touch countless times. She had broken the leaders of mighty civilizations, reduced proud warriors to weeping children, turned entire populations into obedient servants. It had never failed her. The humans would be no different. On the bridge of his ship Harmony, Captain June watched the enemy fleet through the main screen. He was a man of average height, with kind eyes and graying hair. His uniform was worn and patched from 2 years of constant fighting. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, each one knowing this would likely be their last battle. "Sir," called out his second officer, a young woman named Hana, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship." June straightened in his chair. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and Queen Nala's face appeared. Her alien features were sharp and beautiful in a cold way, like a statue carved from ice. When she spoke, her voice was smooth but carried the weight of absolute power. "Captain June of Earth, I am Queen Nala of the Vorthak Empire. You lead the last of your forces against mine. Surrender now, and I will give your people a quick death. Continue to fight, and I will make them suffer for generations." June stood slowly, meeting her gaze through the screen. "Your Majesty, my answer is the same as it has been for 2 years. We will never surrender. Earth is our home, and we will defend it with our last breath." The Queen's purple eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Then you will die with it. But first, I think I will examine your mind. I am curious to see what drives a man to fight a hopeless battle." The transmission ended, and the screen went dark. Around the bridge, June's crew looked at him with expressions of fear and determination mixed together. They all knew what the mind touch meant. They had heard the stories from other worlds. "All ships," June said into his communicator. "This is our final charge. Remember why we fight, remember who we protect for Earth." The 12 human ships moved forward, their engines burning bright against the darkness. They were tiny compared to the Vorthak fleet, like insects flying toward a storm. But they flew with purpose, with hope, with the desperate courage of people who had nothing left to lose. The battle was brief and brutal. The human ships fought with skill and determination, but they were vastly outnumbered. One by one, they fell to the enemy's superior firepower. The Harmony lasted longer than the others, twisting and diving through space, its weapons blazing. But even Captain June's skill could not overcome such odds. When the ship's engines finally failed, when its weapons went silent, the Vorthak ships surrounded it like predators circling wounded prey. Boarding pods attached to the hull with loud crashes, and alien soldiers poured inside. Captain June did not run. He stood on his bridge, watching his crew being taken prisoner, knowing that soon he would face the alien queen and her terrible power. His hands were steady, his breathing calm. He thought of his wife Yuna waiting for him on Earth. He thought of his daughter Mira, only 8 years old, who made paper cranes and believed they would bring peace to the galaxy. He thought of all, the people on the world below, all the lives depending on him to be strong in these final moments. When the Vorthak soldiers came for him, he did not resist. They bound his hands and led him through the corridors of the enemy ship. The walls were dark metal, cold and unwelcoming. Strange symbols glowed with purple light, and the air tasted of metal and ozone. They brought him to a vast chamber at the heart of the ship. Queen Nala sat on a throne made of the same black crystal as her crown. She was even more imposing in person, her presence filling the room like a storm about to break. Around her stood her advisors and guards, all watching the human with curious eyes. "Captain June," the queen said, rising from her throne. "You fought well, but uselessly. Your world is defenseless now. Your people will kneel before me, just as 1,000 other species have done." June lifted his head to meet her gaze. "They will never kneel willingly." "Willingly?" The queen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I do not need their willingness. I need only to touch their minds to show them the futility of resistance. But first I will start with you." She walked down from her throne, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. When she reached June, she was so tall that he had to look up to see her face. Her hand rose toward his forehead, long fingers ending in sharp nails that gleamed like metal. "I will see what makes you so defiant," she said softly. "I will break your mind, as I have broken so many others. And then you will beg me to destroy your world quickly." Her hand touched his skin, cold as winter ice. The mind touch began, and Queen Nala prepared to shatter another enemy's spirit. She had done this countless times before. It would be simple, quick, satisfying. But as her consciousness invaded Captain June's mind, something unexpected happened. Instead of the usual walls of fear and desperate resistance, she found something else entirely. She found a mind that did not fight her invasion but welcomed it with open curiosity. She found a human who was not afraid of her power, but genuinely interested in understanding it. And for the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, Queen Nala hesitated. Queen Nala's mind plunged deeper into Captain June's thoughts, expecting to find the usual chaos of a breaking spirit. Instead, she discovered something that made her stumble backward in shock. His mind was not a fortress to be broken, but a library to be explored. The first memory hit her like a physical blow. She was suddenly standing in a small human dwelling, warm light filling the rooms. A younger version of Captain June sat at a table with a woman who looked much like him. This was his sister Hana, though the queen did not know her name yet. They were sharing a simple meal, laughing about something that had happened during their day. The warmth of their connection flooded through Queen Nala's consciousness. In her own species, siblings were competitors, rivals for resources and status. But here she felt something entirely different. Love. Pure, selfless love between 2 people who cared more about each other's happiness than their own. The memory shifted, and suddenly Queen Nala was experiencing the day the Vorthak ships first appeared in Earth's sky. She felt June's terror, but not for himself. His fear was for his sister, for his people, for strangers he had never met but felt responsible to protect. She watched through his eyes as Hana ran toward a collapsing building, not away from danger, but toward it. There were children trapped, inside, their cries echoing through the smoke and debris. Hana could have fled to safety, but instead she chose to save others. Queen Nala felt June's heart breaking as he watched his sister disappear into the burning structure. She felt his desperate need to follow her, and his greater need to help evacuate the rest of the civilians. She experienced his relief when Hana emerged with 3 small children in her arms, and his crushing grief when the building collapsed, moments later taking his sister with it. But even in his grief, June's first thought was not revenge. It was protecting those who remained. The queen tried to pull back from the memory but found herself drawn deeper into the human's mind. Another scene unfolded, this one filled with light and joy that seemed impossible after such tragedy. She was standing in a garden filled with white flowers watching as June took the hands of a beautiful woman named Yuna. They spoke words of love and commitment, promising to stand together through whatever storms might come. Queen Nala had never witnessed such a ceremony among her own people. Vorthak mating was a clinical process, designed only to produce stronger offspring. But this was different. This was 2 souls choosing to become one, not for strength or advantage, but simply because they could not imagine existing apart. The memory continued, and Queen Nala found herself in a hospital room, watching as June held a tiny baby for the first time. His daughter Mira, so small and fragile that she seemed made of moonlight. The love radiating from the new father was so intense that it made the alien queen's chest ache with an emotion she had no name for. She watched years pass in moments, seeing June teaching his daughter to walk, to read, to fold paper into the shapes of birds and flowers. She saw him working long hours to provide for his family, then coming home exhausted but finding energy to play with Mira until the little girl fell asleep in his arms. When the war began, Queen Nala experienced June's agony at leaving his family behind. She felt his daily struggle with the choice between his duty to protect all of humanity and his desire to stay home with the people he loved most. But the memories were not just about June's personal life. Through his mind, Queen Nala began to see the truth about humanity that her species had never understood. She saw Dr. Hyun, working in a field hospital, treating both human and captured Vorthak soldiers with the same gentle care. When his assistants questioned why he would help their enemies, he simply said that pain was pain, and healing was healing. Queen Nala watched in amazement as this human doctor saved the life of a Vorthak warrior who had tried to kill him just hours before. She witnessed Teacher Soman staying behind in a school during an evacuation to make sure every child reached safety. The woman could have escaped, but she chose to be the last one out, carrying a frightened boy on her back while the sky burned above them. She experienced the story of Farmer Day, who shared his final harvest with refugees from destroyed cities. His own family went hungry so that strangers could eat. When asked why, he said that food was meant to be shared and that kindness was the only crop that grew stronger when you gave it away. Each memory was like a window into a completely different way of thinking. The Vorthak Empire was built on the idea that strength came from taking what you wanted, that power meant making others fear you. But these humans seemed to find their strength in giving things away, in protecting the weak, in choosing love over fear even when it cost them everything. Queen Nala saw mothers who died protecting children who were not their own. She saw soldiers who risked their lives to save enemy civilians. She saw ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of kindness, not for reward or recognition, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The most shocking discovery was how these humans viewed failure and weakness. In Vorthak society, any sign of weakness meant death or exile. But among humans, Queen Nala found stories of people who had fallen and been lifted up by others, who had made mistakes and been forgiven, who had lost everything and been given new chances to start over. She experienced June's memory of his first major failure as a young officer, when his poor judgment led to the deaths of 3 soldiers under his command. Instead of being cast out, he was supported by his fellow officers, taught to learn from his mistakes, and eventually became a better leader because of his failure. This concept was so alien to Queen Nala that it made her mind reel. Her species discarded the weak, punished failure with death, and saw mercy as a dangerous weakness. But humans seemed to believe that everyone deserved a second chance, that mistakes were opportunities to grow, and that true strength came from helping others become strong. The strangest part was how these beliefs made them stronger, not weaker. Queen Nala had expected to find a species of soft, emotional creatures who would break easily under pressure. Instead, she discovered a people who had turned their capacity for love into an unbreakable armor. Every human soldier she saw through June's memories fought not just for victory, but for the people they loved. Every civilian who had died in the eye, war had done so protecting others. Every act of kindness had created bonds that made the entire species stronger. Queen Nala finally managed to pull her consciousness back from June's mind, gasping as she returned to her own body. She found herself sitting on the floor of her throne room, her guards looking at her with concern. Captain June was still standing where she had left him, but his expression had changed. Instead of fear or defiance, his eyes showed something that made her even more uncomfortable. He was looking at her with pity. "You have never experienced love, have you?" he asked softly. The question hit Queen Nala harder than any weapon ever had. She rose to her feet, her legs unsteady, her mind reeling from what she had seen and felt. For 300 years she had believed that her species was superior because they were strong, because they took what they wanted, because they were feared across the galaxy. But in one human's mind she had discovered a strength she never knew existed. A strength that came from caring about others more than yourself. A strength that grew when it was shared instead of hoarded. For the first time in her long life, Queen Nala began to wonder if everything she had believed about power and strength was wrong. Queen Nala paced her private chambers like a caged animal, her mind churning with thoughts she had never experienced before. 3 days had passed since she touched Captain June's mind, and she had not slept once. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those human memories, felt those alien emotions that seemed to burn through her consciousness. The conquest of Earth had stopped. Her fleet hung motionless in space while she struggled to understand what she had discovered in the humans. Thoughts. Commander Thek had asked for orders a dozen times, but she kept telling him to wait, to be patient, that she needed more time to plan their final victory. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. She did not know if she wanted to conquer Earth anymore. Outside her window, the blue planet turned slowly in the darkness. Somewhere on its surface lived billions of humans like Captain June, each one carrying stories of love and sacrifice that her species had never imagined. The thought of destroying such a world suddenly seemed not like a victory, but like the greatest loss in the history of the galaxy. A soft chime announced that someone was requesting entry to her chambers. Queen Nala straightened her posture and tried to compose herself. "Enter," she called. Commander Thek stepped through the doorway, his massive form filling the entrance. His scarred face was twisted into a frown of concern and suspicion. "My queen, the crew is asking questions. They wonder why we delay the final attack. Some are beginning to whisper that the human prisoner has somehow affected your judgment." Queen Nala turned away from the window to face her oldest advisor. Thek had served her for over 2 centuries, had helped her conquer 47 worlds. He was loyal, brutal, and completely devoted to the Vorthak way of life. "The human is no threat to me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am simply considering our options." "What options?" Thek's voice grew harder. "We have 500 ships. They have none. We have thousands of warriors. They have one broken captain in our holding cells. The only option is to finish what we started." Queen Nala felt something twist in her chest at his words. The casual way he spoke of destroying an entire civilization, the complete lack of consideration for the lives that would be lost, suddenly sickened her. "Perhaps we could offer them terms," she said carefully. "A conditional surrender. They could serve the Empire without being completely destroyed." Commander Thek's eyes widened in shock. "My queen, we do not negotiate with prey. We have never shown mercy to any species we have conquered. Why should these humans be different?" "Because they taught me what love means," Queen Nala thought. But she could not say those words aloud. Instead, she simply said, "Leave me. I will make my decision soon." Thek hesitated at the doorway. "Your Majesty, I have served you faithfully for many years. I have watched you break the will of emperors and kings. You have never shown weakness before. Do not start now. After he left, Queen Nala found herself walking through the corridors of her ship toward the holding cells. She had not intended to visit Captain June again, but her feet seemed to carry her there without conscious thought. The prison section was deep in the ship's belly, far from the light of stars. Guards snapped to attention as she passed, but she ignored them. At the end of a long hallway was a single cell, its energy barrier glowing softly in the darkness. Captain June sat on the narrow bed, his back against the wall. He was not sleeping, not pacing, not planning escape. Instead, he was carefully folding a piece of fabric from his torn uniform into an intricate pattern. As Queen Nala watched, she realized he was making one of those paper birds his daughter loved, except using cloth instead of paper. It is called an origami crane, June said without looking up, somehow sensing her presence. My daughter Mira believes that if you fold 1,000 of them, they will bring peace to whoever needs it most. Queen Nala stepped closer to the energy barrier. That is a foolish superstition. Maybe, June agreed, still working on his creation. But Mira has made over 800 cranes since the war began. She gives them to people in the refugee camps, to wounded soldiers, to anyone who looks sad or afraid. And somehow those people do seem to find a little peace. He finished the crane and held it up to the light. Even made from rough uniform fabric, it was beautiful in its simplicity. Why do you not hate me? Queen Nala asked suddenly. I have destroyed your fleet, killed your friends, conquered your world. Yet when you look at me, I see no anger in your eyes. Captain June finally met her. Because I felt your surprise when you touched my mind. You expected to find something ugly and broken, but instead you found love and hope. That tells me that your people have never shown you these things. My people are strong, Queen Nala said, but the words sounded hollow even to her. Strength without love is just violence, June replied. Power without compassion is just cruelty. Your empire may span 1,000 worlds, but how many of your subjects actually care if you live or die? The question hit Queen Nala like a physical blow. She thought of her vast empire, of all the species that knelt before her throne. They obeyed her out of fear, served her because they had no choice, bowed to her because the alternative was death. But care about her? Love her? The concept was alien. Tell me another story, she said, surprising herself with the request. June set down his fabric crane and leaned back against the wall. What kind of story would you like to hear? Tell me about forgiveness. There was once a village leader named Bora, June began, his voice taking on the rhythm of someone who had told this tale many times. She ruled during a terrible famine, when there was barely enough food to keep anyone alive. One day she discovered that one of the villagers had been stealing food from the common stores. Queen Nala leaned forward, interested despite herself. What did she do? Execute the thief. The other villagers wanted her to, June continued. They were angry and frightened, ready to cast the thief out to die in the wilderness. But Bora asked to speak with the man alone. She discovered that he had been taking food not for himself but for his sick mother, who was too proud to ask for help. So the thief was noble, Queen Nala said. That changes everything. Does it? June asked. What if he had been stealing? For himself? What if he was just hungry and afraid? Bora decided that the reason did not matter. What mattered was that her people were turning against each other, that fear was making them cruel. So what did she do? She divided her own food, portion in half, and gave the extra to the thief's mother. Then she announced to the village that anyone who was hungry should come to her, and she would find a way to help them. She chose to trust her people instead of punishing them. Queen Nala shook her head. That was foolish. It would have encouraged more stealing. Actually, it stopped all stealing, June said with a gentle smile. When people knew that their leader would help them instead of punish them, when they felt trusted instead of feared, they began to help each other. The village not only survived the famine, but came out of it stronger and more united than before. Impossible, Queen Nala muttered. but she was thinking of her own empire, of all the rebellions she had crushed, all the planets that served her grudgingly, all the subjects who obeyed her only because they were afraid. The strongest leaders are not those who make people fear them, June said softly. They are the ones who make people want to follow them. They are the ones who serve their people instead of making their people serve them. Queen Nala stared at the human captain for a long moment. Everything he said went against every lesson she had ever learned, every principle her civilization was built upon. Yet something deep inside her, some part of her consciousness that had been touched by his memories of love and sacrifice, whispered that he might be right. "I should execute you," she said finally. "Yes," June agreed. "That is what a conqueror would do. Then what should I do instead?" For the first time since their conversation began, Captain June smiled. "That depends on whether you want to remain a conqueror or become something greater." Queen Nala left the holding cells with her mind more troubled than ever. As she walked through her ship, she began to see things differently. Her crew moved with mechanical efficiency, following orders without question, showing no joy in their work or love for their leader. Her advisors spoke only words they thought she wanted to hear, never offering genuine counsel or friendship. She realized that in 3 centuries of rule, she had never had a real conversation with anyone. She had only given orders and received reports. She was the most powerful being in the galaxy, and also the most alone. That night, as she stood once again at her window looking down at Earth, Queen Nala made a decision that would change everything. She would return to Captain June one more time, not to break his mind or extract information, but to ask him the most important question of her life. She wanted to know if it was possible for someone like her to learn how to love. Commander Tech stood in the shadows outside Queen Nala's chambers, his face twisted with anger and suspicion. For the 3rd night in a row, he had watched his queen leave her rooms and walk toward the prison cells. Each time she returned, she seemed more distant, more troubled, more unlike the ruthless leader he had served for 2 centuries. Tonight, he decided to follow her. Moving silently through the corridors, Tech kept his distance as Queen Nala made her way to the holding cells. He positioned himself where he could hear but not be seen, and what he heard made his blood run cold. His queen was asking the human prisoner about love, about forgiveness, about mercy. She spoke like someone who had never heard these concepts before, which was exactly what Thek had hoped would always be true. When Queen Nala finally left the prison section, Tech was waiting for her in the main corridor. She stopped when she saw him, her purple eyes narrowing with surprise and something that might have been guilt. "Commander," she said carefully, "you are awake late." "As are you, my queen." Tech stepped closer, his massive form blocking her path. "I could not help but notice that you have been visiting our prisoner frequently. Some might wonder if this is wise." Queen Nala's spine straightened, and for a moment she looked like her old self. "Are you questioning my judgment, Commander?" "I'm questioning your behavior," Thek replied bluntly. "You have been changed by whatever that human showed you. You speak of mercy and negotiation when you should be planning destruction. You hesitate where you once acted with certainty." "Perhaps certainty is not always wise," Queen Nala said, and the words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Thek's scarred face hardened. "You have been contaminated by human weakness. This is exactly what I feared would happen if you touched that creature's mind." "What I found in his mind was not weakness," Queen Nala said, her voice growing stronger. "It was a different kind of strength. A strength that comes from caring about others, from building instead of destroying, from creating loyalty through love instead of fear." "Love." Thek spat the word like a curse. "Love is what makes prey animals huddle together while predators hunt them. Love is what makes weak species sacrifice themselves for others. Love is why we have been able to conquer 1,000 worlds while they could not even defend one." Queen Nala felt something hot and angry rise in her chest. "And yet this one world has fought us longer and harder than any other. These humans, with their love and their sacrifice, have shown more courage than species twice their size and strength. Courage born of foolishness, Thek replied. They fight because they do not understand that resistance is useless. Once we break their spirit, they will kneel like all the others. Will they? Queen Nala asked. Or will they die first? And if they die, what do we gain? A dead world? Empty cities? The ashes of a civilization that might have taught us something valuable? Commander Thek stared at his queen as if she had grown a second head. Taught us? We are the teachers, my queen. We teach lesser species their place in the galaxy. We teach them to kneel, to serve, to fear. What could these humans possibly teach us? Queen Nala was quiet for a long moment, remembering the warmth of Captain June's memories, the stories of human kindness and sacrifice, the love between family members and friends that had made her chest ache with longing. They could teach us how to be happy, she said finally. The words seemed to echo in the corridor. Thek's face went through several expressions before settling on cold determination. You are no longer fit to rule, he said. The human has poisoned your mind with his weakness. I will not allow you to destroy our empire with your newfound sentimentality. You forget yourself, Commander, Queen Nala said, her voice dropping to the low, dangerous tone that had once made entire civilizations tremble. I am still your queen. A queen who has been compromised by the enemy, Thek replied. A queen who speaks of love and mercy when she should speak of conquest and glory. A queen who has forgotten what it means to be Vorthak. The confrontation was interrupted by an alarm echoing through the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors as a voice announced over the communication system that the human prisoner had escaped from his cell. Queen Nala and Commander Thek looked at each other, both realizing that their argument had distracted the A guards and given Captain June his opportunity. Without another word, they both ran toward the prison section. The holding cells were in chaos. 2 guards lay unconscious on the floor, and the energy barrier that had held Captain June was flickering and failing. But the human was nowhere to be seen. Search every deck, Thek ordered the remaining guards. Find the human and bring him to me alive. I want to question him about what he did to our queen. As the guards scattered to begin their search, Queen Nala found herself hoping that Captain June would find a way to escape entirely. The thought surprised her, but she could not deny it. Somewhere in the past few days, she had begun to think of him not as a prisoner but as something she had never had before, a friend. But instead of fleeing toward the shuttle bays or trying to find a way off the ship, Captain June had done something typically human. He had gone looking for Queen Nala. She found him in her private chambers, standing at the same window where she had spent so many hours staring down at Earth. He was not trying to access her computers or steal her weapons. He was simply looking at his home world, and when she entered the room, he turned to face her with that same calm expression he had worn since the day of his capture. You should have run, Queen Nala said, closing the door behind her. My guards are searching the entire ship for you. I did not come here to run, Captain June replied. I came here to show you something. He gestured toward the window, toward the blue and white marble of Earth, turning slowly in the darkness. Look at your fleet, Your Majesty. Look at how they surround my world like a fist closing around a throat. What do you see? Queen Nala looked at her 500 ships, arranged in perfect formation, bristling with weapons, ready to rain death on the planet below. I see power, she said. I see strength. I see fear, Captain June said quietly. I see an empire so afraid of losing control that it destroys anything it cannot dominate. I see rulers so terrified of being disobeyed that they have forgotten how to inspire loyalty. He turned to face her fully, and his eyes were sad, but not angry. Your people do not love you, Your Majesty. They obey you because they have no choice. But what happens when you die? What happens when your empire faces a threat it cannot simply destroy? Who will fight for you then? Queen Nala felt something crack inside her chest, some wall she had built around her heart centuries ago. What are you saying? I am saying that my people will fight for Earth not because they have to, but because they want to. They will die for their families, their friends, their neighbors, their pets, their favorite trees, their childhood memories. They will fight for love, and that makes them stronger than any weapon you possess. Love did not save your fleet, Queen Nala pointed out, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. No, Captain June agreed. Love could not overcome your superior numbers and technology, but love is what brought me here, to your chambers, to try one last time to help you understand something that could change everything. And what is that, Captain? June smiled, and for a moment he looked like the father she had seen in his memories, the man who had folded paper cranes with his daughter and promised his wife he would come home safely. That you do not have to be alone anymore, he said. That there is another way to rule, another way to live, another way to find strength. All you have to do is choose it. The door to Queen Nala's chambers burst open, and Commander Thek stormed in with a squad of guards behind him. His eyes blazed with fury when he saw Captain June standing freely in the room. Step away from the prisoner, my queen, Thek commanded. He is clearly more dangerous than we realized. But Queen Nala did not move. She stood between Captain June and the guards, her tall form blocking their path to him. No, she said simply. The single word seemed to hang in the air like a sword, about to fall. Commander Thek's face went through several expressions before settling on cold determination. Then you leave me no choice, he said. By the authority of the Vorthak Military Council, I declare you unfit to rule. You will be removed from command, and the human will be executed immediately. Queen Nala felt something she had never experienced before. Not anger, not fear, but a calm certainty that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her soul. If you want to harm him, she said quietly, you will have to go through me first. For the first time in her life, Queen Nala of the Vorthak Empire was choosing to protect someone instead of destroying them. And as she made that choice, she finally understood what Captain June had been trying to teach her. True power was not the ability to make others fear you. True power was the willingness to stand between those you cared about and anything that would harm them, even if it cost you everything. The standoff in Queen Nala's chambers lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Commander Thek stared at his queen in disbelief, while his guards looked uncertain about what to do. Never in the history of the Vorthak Empire had a ruler been challenged so directly by their own military. You would betray your own species for this human? Thek asked, his voice filled with disgust. Queen Nala stood straighter, her hand moving to the black crystal crown on her head. I would save my species from itself. She lifted the crown from her head, holding it in both hands. The guards gasped, and even Thek stepped backward. No Vorthak ruler had ever removed their crown in the presence of others. It was the ultimate symbol of their power, their divine right to rule over lesser beings. For 3 centuries I have worn this crown, Queen Nala said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. For 3 centuries I have used it to rule through fear, to conquer, through violence, to build an empire on the bones of the innocent. But I have learned something that changes everything. She looked at Captain June, who stood calmly beside her, and then back at Commander Thek and the guards. I learned that true strength does not come from making others kneel before you. It comes from lifting them up. True power is not the ability to destroy, but the choice to protect and nurture. And true leadership means serving those who follow you, not forcing them to serve you. Commander Thek's face twisted with rage. You speak like a fool, contaminated by human weakness. Guards, arrest the queen. She is no longer fit to rule. But the guards hesitated. Some of them had served Queen Nala for decades, had followed her across the galaxy, had seen her lead them to victory after victory. The idea of arresting their own ruler was almost unthinkable. Queen Nala saw their uncertainty and made her choice. She activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting her voice to every vessel in the fleet, every soldier in her army, every being under her command. People of the Vorthak Empire, she began, her voice steady and clear. I am Queen Nala, and I speak to you now not as your ruler, but as someone who has discovered a truth that will change us all. On ships throughout the fleet, Crew members stopped their work to listen. On the bridge of every vessel, officers gathered around communication screens. Even on the distant worlds of the Empire, her words were being heard. "We have built our civilization on conquest and fear," Queen Nala continued. "We have told ourselves that strength means taking what we want, that power means making others afraid of us. But I have touched the mind of a human captain, and I have seen a different way to live." She placed her crown on the table beside her, where it caught the light from the stars outside. "I have seen what it means to love someone more than yourself. I have witnessed the courage that comes from protecting others instead of destroying them. I have learned that the strongest bonds are not forged in fear, but in hope, in trust, in the choice to stand together instead of apart." Throughout the fleet, her words were causing chaos. Some soldiers cheered, inspired by their queen's vision of a better way. Others, like Commander Thek, saw only weakness and betrayal. The Empire was beginning to split apart. "I will no longer rule through fear," Queen Nala declared. "I will no longer conquer worlds and break their people. Instead, I offer a new path, a path where different species work together, where strength comes from unity instead of domination, where we build instead of destroy." Commander Thek could contain himself no longer. "Enough!" he roared, pulling out his weapon. "You have betrayed everything we stand for. I will not let you destroy our empire with your madness." But as he raised his weapon toward Queen Nala, something unexpected happened. Captain June stepped forward, placing himself between the commander and the queen. "Stop," the human said calmly. "If you kill her, you will prove that everything she just said is true. You will show your people that the only way your empire knows how to deal with different ideas is through violence." "Move aside, human," Thek snarled. "This does not concern you." "It concerns all of us," Captain June replied. "Every choice we make ripples outward, affecting everyone around us. Your queen has chosen to try something new, something better. Will you choose to destroy that possibility, or will you choose to see where it leads?" For a moment it seemed like Thek might listen, but then his face hardened with centuries of conditioning, and he fired his weapon. The energy blast should have killed Captain June instantly, but Queen Nala moved faster than she ever had before, throwing herself in front of the human and taking the blast herself. She fell to the floor, her silver skin burned and smoking, but still alive. The sight of their queen bleeding to protect a human prisoner shocked everyone in the room. The guards looked at Commander Thek with horror, while several of them moved to help Queen Nala. "You see?" she whispered, looking up at Thek from the floor. "This is the choice that defines us. Will we hurt others to get what we want, or will we risk ourselves to protect them?" The ship's communication system was still active, carrying her words throughout the fleet. On dozens of vessels, crews were making their own choices. Some ships moved to support Commander Thek, but others began moving toward the Queen's flagship, ready to defend her new vision. Captain June knelt beside Queen Nala, pressing his hands against her wound to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," he said gently. "Your people need you." "Our people," Queen Nala corrected him, and even through her pain she managed to smile. The battle that followed was unlike any in Vorthak history. It was not fought between different species, but between different ideas. Half the fleet believed in the old ways of conquest and fear, while the other half was willing to try Queen Nala's vision of cooperation and love. But the battle was not won by superior firepower or better tactics. It was won by the power of example. As the fighting raged, human ships began arriving from Earth not to attack, but to help evacuate civilians from damaged vessels. Human doctors treated wounded Vorthak soldiers. Human engineers worked alongside alien crews to repair damaged ships. When Commander Thek's followers saw their enemies choosing to save lives instead of taking them, something began to change. One by one, ships stopped fighting and began talking. One by one, soldiers put down their weapons and started helping with rescue efforts. The rebellion ended not with a great explosion, but with a quiet moment when Commander Thek himself, wounded and trapped in his damaged ship, was rescued by a joint team of humans and Vorthak working together. 3 months later, Queen Nala stood once again in her throne room, But everything had changed. Her crown still sat on her head, but now it felt different. It was no longer a symbol of absolute power, but a reminder of absolute responsibility. Around her stood advisors from dozens of different species, each one chosen not for their ability to inspire fear, but for their wisdom and compassion. Earth had become the first world to join the Vorthak Empire as equals, and others were following their example. Captain June had returned to his family, but he often came to visit the Queen as an ambassador and friend. His daughter Mira had sent Queen Nala 1,000 paper cranes, each one folded with the hope of peace, and the Queen had hung them throughout her chambers as a reminder of what she had learned. The empire was smaller now than it had been before. Some worlds had chosen to leave rather than accept the new ways, but those that remained were stronger, more united, more truly loyal than they had ever been under the old system of fear. Queen Nala often thought about the moment when she had first touched Captain June's mind, expecting to find weakness and instead discovering strength. She had learned that the greatest victory was not conquering your enemies but turning them into friends. The greatest power was not the ability to destroy, but the choice to create and protect. And the greatest treasure in the galaxy was not a crown or a throne, but the love and respect of those who chose to follow you not because they had to, but because they wanted to. On quiet evenings, Queen Nala would stand at her window and look out at the stars, each one representing a world where beings were learning to live together instead of apart. She would hold one of Mira's paper cranes in her hands and remember the human captain who had taught her that true strength came not from closing your heart, but from opening it wide enough to hold the entire universe. The galaxy was still vast and full of challenges, but now it was also full of hope, and that Queen Nala had learned made all the difference.